Sean McVay, the youngest coach to ever win a Super Bowl, on his future with the Rams, indicating we'll see. Quote, we'll see. Speaking of seeing, let's take a look at this panel's picks. Tim Calishaw, Emily Kaplan, you nearly hit the number on the head, both of you guys. Pablo Torre, Clinton Yates, thanks for playing.
About that.
Yeah. Ben Simmons and James Harden dueling media availabilities today. Who ya got? Let's start with Ben Simmons as he introduces himself with the Brooklyn Nets.
It was just piled up, a bunch of things that had gone over the years to where I just knew I wasn't myself and I needed to get back into that place of, being myself and being happy as a person and taking care of my well-being. It wasn't about the basketball, it wasn't about the money, anything like that. I want to be who I am and get back to, playing basketball at that level.
First, we've heard from Simmons in quite some time. He says it's not about the basketball, not about money, but this is a story about basketball. It's a story about mental health. It's a story about money, Pablo Torre. Around the horn to you. How'd you hear Ben Simmons today?
I believe what he said in that clip, Tony, because so many people right now, Sixers fans right now, are mad that Ben Simmons suddenly looks happy when he told us he was miserable, when he told us he had mental health concerns. And to that, I ask, what did you expect this to look like? Because if you doubt the veracity of Ben Simmons' misery, the guy paid over $20 million in fines to not have to work for the Sixers again, Tony. I don't know what kind of punishment they wanted on top of that. I don't know what kind of proof they want on top of that. There are, by the way, reports, stories in the Australian press specifically dating back to April about family dynamics in Ben Simmons' family that give real credence to the idea that there is other stuff going on in his brain. But the idea that you can be miserable working for a place, be dying to get out of there, and then show up and suddenly feel a lot better, that all adds up to me. And it adds up, by the way, again, to over $20 million in lost income because he felt that convicted about it.
Emily Kaplan.
This is a guy who's relieved to be in a different environment. And Pablo, you alluded to those stories. Our reporter Shelburne wrote it in October. His sister accused their older brother of molesting her. That's really heavy stuff. It happened in April. He took 4 games off, and it feels like that's where a lot of his issues spiraled. But nobody focuses on that. They all talk about mental health when it's convenient to him, or they weaponize certain details. And that's why nobody opens up about these things. Ben Simmons never wanted to be the poster child for mental health, but because he opened up slightly, he has to be. So for him, I'm just excited that he gets a fresh start, he gets to be in a new environment, and from a basketball perspective, he gets to work with new coaches and development staff that maybe can help him with his shooting.
First, we've heard from Ben Simmons. Tim Calishaw, what did you hear today?
Yeah, I heard a man who tried to explain to us something we're kind of learning, that if you have any kind of anxiety, the first order of business is to get out of that place and to get somewhere different. And as Pablo explained, just as money doesn't buy you happiness, the fear of losing money isn't that great compared to whatever is going on in your head when you're having issues. I don't fault any of the media there. We really haven't figured out how to even ask these questions. When it's knee surgery, we say, how's your knee? And they start talking about the rehab.
Right.
There's no real way to say, how's your brain today? A neurologist really can't answer that question. I thought he did a good job of explaining why he feels a little better about being where he is now.
And Clinton Yates.
He sounds like a grown adult who understands his own responsibilities. And in this particular case, his responsibility is to himself as an athlete and to who he is as a family member, not to the fan base of the Philadelphia 76ers, which we had been, for some reason, defending their honor beyond anything. I think this is what this comes down to. The only person who really cares that Simmons walked away and said, I don't like you specifically, Philly, is the Philly fan base. I think this is a tough pill to swallow if you're them, because you're looking at it and saying, well, it looks great now. That's what happens when you break up with somebody and move on. The environment's changed. Y'all should get over it. He has, clearly, and I'm happy for the man.
Ben Simmons, the basketball player now, Pablo Torre. What to expect, what to see, what's the timeline? This is a Brooklyn team that wants to compete right now.
Tony, I'm a Ben Simmons stockholder. My previous description of him holds true. I think he is a flying car without a stereo, right? He can't shoot. That's a big problem. But in this particular organization, he doesn't have to. He does not have to. I expect to see the best Ben Simmons we have seen possibly ever as a result of that dynamic. And yes, I think he has to ease his way back in. I don't expect him to be in Philly on March 10th, but I do expect him to be back and better than he has been.
Tim Calishaw, you have any view of that?
Yeah, we know which end of the floor he struggles at, and we know which end of the floor he excels at. And Brooklyn, dead last in the NBA since January 1 in defensive rating. He will help them exponentially right away in that front.
Exponentially. Oh, there it is, Ed.
Yes. That's a 5-point.
While that was happening in Brooklyn, we turn our attention now to Philly and James Harden with his media availability today, introducing himself as a 76er.
But I don't really want to get into, the Brooklyn situation. I just knew, for a very long time this is a perfect fit, and obviously you got a big man, best big man in the league, and Joel. I'm just here to contribute, and I know that I can do that very well. So on the court, when you got high-level skill guys that knows the game and all they want to do is win, we'll figure it out.
Tim, it's the first we've heard from Harden in his own words in quite some time as well. How did you hear James Harden, Philadelphia 76er today?
I thought it was helpful of the Sixers PR staff to put the name card out there like it's a first-round game in March Madness. Florida Gulf Coast's leading scorers are out there. Beyond that, I thought it was important that he said not only can I play with Embiid, which I think a lot of us assume they can get pretty good at some point, when he left Houston, he was hoping to end up in Philadelphia at that point, because if you don't have that in your head, you're thinking he was unhappy in Houston, he's unhappy in Brooklyn. What in the world is going to make him happy the third time around in the last 2 years? And he's at least telling us this is where he wanted to go all along. So we'll see.
Clinton Yates.
One of the other things he said was the dreaded banned word in my personal book, Tony, which is, it is what it is, when referring to the past. What it is the problem, my guy. That's what we're concerned about, is that you couldn't stay in town on any other team. So if I'm a Philly fan, I'm looking at that thinking, I'm going to need a little bit more. I don't think that he's necessarily totally in the same place, but I wanted to hear more from him as somebody who's done this before and been there.
Pablo Torre.
Yeah, look, there's been an open question. Is James Harden tanking his own value, or is he just declining as a basketball player? A really fun hypothesis for a guy you're about to pay maybe $270 million to if you're the Sixers. But the person I think of and laugh at in this circumstance, of course, is the owner of the Rockets, Tillman Fertitta, because that dude did not want to trade James Harden from the Rockets to Philly and Daryl Morey, who was his GM in Houston just weeks prior. And now guess what? I imagine he's telling everybody, I told all of you what was going to happen. Daryl goes, James follows. That is exactly, honestly, what has happened here.
Emily Kaplan.
I don't know, I'm having a hard time with some of these points because what I heard was a lot of revisionist history. Like, was he pining for the 76ers the entire time he was with the Nets? He seemed to really want to be on the Nets. I honestly think the most important thing he said, though, was something that the entire Nets organization has been unable to say out loud, which was, it was very difficult for me to be there and having Kyrie as a part-time player. Like, he's like, this isn't what I signed up for. I signed up to play with Kyrie and KD, not for him to be here part of the time. And what I do know now is that, for better or worse, he is tying his legacy to Daryl Morey. These two guys are always going to be linked. And for Morey, I think that's a bit of a risk because they had a really good thing going with Joel Embiid. And now you hope it works out with James Harden, but you just don't know.
Right. The basketball questions now. How is the fit with Embiid and Harden? Pablo, can you get your arms around that?
I think there are real questions about two guys who love having the ball, two giant egos. And I do agree with Emily, right? This is Daryl counting on his philosophy. Not only do I need superstars, I need this specific superstar. It's Daryl's entire mission his whole career. Try and win a title with James Harden. He's putting all of his chips, again, to the center of the table on that.
Clinton Yates.
This is where the age becomes a factor. He pointed out how few games they played together, the big three in Brooklyn. They haven't played together yet because, hello, I mean, he's not on the court. This is what matters to me. Availability is huge for this guy. Never mind ability.
We've been horned. We'll move on. Football now. Kyler Murray indicating all of this nonsense is not what I'm about. Quote, all of this nonsense is not what I'm about. His statement, which you could read more of here, suggesting he's not responsible for any of the drama or iciness that's perceived to be going on in Arizona now with the team and their quarterback when the quarterback stopped following them and removed them from social media. Tim, your account. Cardinals are millennials here. Is there something or nothing here?
There is a little something here. It's hard to sell all of this nonsense is not what I'm about when you're the one taking the Cardinals off your Instagram account. That has to be some sort of statement. And the thing that would bother me, if I were to be a Cardinals fan, is that Kyler Murray seems to think the last game a disaster with the Rams, 34-11, was mostly on other people. It was on him. He was terrible. He was bouncing throws from the start. He was not finding receivers. He was making poor decisions. That's what should be in his head. I've got to do better. I've got to finish the season stronger. I can't just go to pieces when we lose DeAndre Hopkins. And he basically did, and they're going to have to get that going again somehow.
Emily Kaplan.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with that sentence, too. All this nonsense is not what I'm about. Firstly, there's just too many double negatives there. I'm just a little confused. Secondly, he then goes and does the pettiest thing which you could possibly do, which is, erase all of the pictures of your significant other and then make your own profile picture, a picture of you in two different uniforms, the Oklahoma Sooners and the Oakland A's. But the biggest telling thing to me is that the Cardinals have not come out and spoken at all and said, you know what, this is a misunderstanding. We stand by our guy. This is a quarterback with a high ceiling on an entry-level deal. You should be doing everything you can to support him and prop him up. So you do get the sense that maybe they are the leaks here, that maybe Kyler is the problem, and you do get the sense that, okay, maybe Kyler isn't long for here, and maybe the scapegoat really should be Cliff Kingsbury, who failed up to get to this position and has a history of failing out at the end of postseasons, but instead it is Kyler Murray.
Pablo Torre.
Yeah, there is real smoke here, Tony, that indicates a real fire. Keep in mind the money aspect of all of this. Kyler Murray is due for that fifth-year team option. He is due possibly for an extension. Guess who else is at the same exact moment in time? That fifth-year option, Cliff Kingsbury, his coach. Do you believe that they're getting along great right now after a game like that one, an elimination like that one? Because I don't. And so here are two guys leveraging in public for more money and more power. This is going to perhaps result in choosing one or the other.
Clinton Yates.
Yeah, but to use your analogy there, Pablo, there's a lot of smoke for something that should not be that much of a fire. A contract dispute is legitimate. And if you got all this background stuff playing out in public, to me, again, this is a leadership matter when it comes to the franchise. I'm stunned a team could not get it together to handle a young black quarterback who has enough agency to actually say what he thinks and go forward with it in public. I mean, to me, this is another scenario where I should not have to be hearing about what people think about the quarterback from sources around the league. It seems that you should be able to discuss this with the face of your franchise, who's been the only reason anybody's watching the last 5 years, not driving to something ridiculous.
Pablo, you brought up the idea that they were headed towards a decision, and you're implying it's the coach or the quarterback. How many teams have chosen the coach over the number one quarterback? I mean,
Yeah,
I guess New England took Belichick over Brady in recent times, but not many teams are taking the coach over the quarterback. We're taking a break here, buy or sell on the other side.
I would never not.
I almost don't believe what I'm seeing. Seeing her on the Olympic ice right now with everything we've discovered over the last week, I did not think this was going to happen, and I don't think it should be happening. That was Tara Lipinski today on the call. The entire world watching as the Olympics has allowed Kamila Valieva to skate in the women's short program this morning. What was described as a shaky performance for her, and through tears, she's still currently in first with the free program to come Thursday. The 15-year-old Valieva tested positive for a performance enhancer in a sample taken 7 weeks ago, but the lab did not report the test until last week, the day after Valieva nailed a quad and helped win a team gold for the ROC. The Court of Arbitration for Sport panel ruling she could compete in these games going forward because the delay in notifying Russia of that test and because the result was, quote, not her fault and not competing would, quote, do her irreparable harm. IOC saying she can skate, but if she places in the top 3 and she's the favorite, there will be no medal ceremony for anybody. And the last thing, you heard me say ROC before because Russia athletes, you'll note, are not competing under the Russian flag, but rather an Olympic flag and called the Russian Olympic Committee because of a national ban for doping. Emily Kaplan, what type of situation do the Olympics have here?
A really, really bad one. First, I just would like to strip away some of the xenophobia here because people are going to say, oh, she's Russian, it's always the Russians, and this is something I'm sensitive to covering hockey. She's a human being who grew up in a culture that's different than ours and different things were expected of her. She's 15, I have empathy for her. That said, there's enough smoke here where I always thought there was a zero tolerance for cheating in the Olympics. And the fact that they're going to rob 2 other athletes potentially of having that experience on the podium is just, it's a disgrace.
Pablo Torre.
Yeah, look, Russia has been involved in a doping scandal for about, I believe, a half dozen Olympics running. And so I agree with Emily, right? It's a minor. Let's have empathy towards her personal situation. But in terms of the system of doping that Russia has built, I find it fascinating that the Olympics and the IOC in specific gives them an exemption here. I just don't understand the logic, and I fear the precedent. Does this just incentivize them to use more younger athletes so that they have immunity from punishment in the future, Tony? There are real questions I have around that, too.
Clinton Yates.
Yeah, if you want some background on that in terms of how that whole testing and so forth thing goes, check out the movie Icarus. But to me, it's just a basic, watching this as a fan, you think, well, you're letting people break the rules, and then you're letting people that broke the rules, them specifically aside, potentially ruin other people's careers. If you're not having medal ceremonies and you're letting people skate after doping, what is the point of the entire competition? I don't understand.
And Tim Calisher, do you view this as a technicality here? The lab didn't get the result in, and then the IOC was boxed in here because she had already competed and helped the team win gold?
It reminds me of like when you score a touchdown in football and we have to wait 2 minutes to see if the player survived the ground. Only the Olympics is going to wait maybe a month or two to hand out medals. They're going to let her compete in their signature sport. They've already told the team skaters we're not going to have medals for that because she competed in that. And these other athletes are going to find out what, in March or April, if they won or if they got a medal. It's kind of insane.
Buy or sell two, Sean McVay. The idea you can be the youngest to win a Super Bowl ever, 36. But also thinking about leaving the trade. It's just fascinating. We'll see, he said. Clinton, how do you hear we'll see?
I hear this is a guy that was not only the youngest guy ever hired to coach a team in the NFL, youngest guy ever to make the playoffs, youngest guy ever to make the Super Bowl, youngest guy ever to make multiple Super Bowls, youngest guy ever to win it, and he also did it while getting NFL Coach of the Year. He's done it all, okay? I like the fact that he's thinking about this in terms of the fact that he does not have some omerta to the NFL. He can actually do other things with his life because, hello, he's a pretty smart guy and makes a lot of money. If he goes into the booth, I'll be watching him every Sunday. I love what he's bringing.
Tim Calisher.
You know, he's younger than the two quarterbacks who competed for the MVP trophy. He's been to the Super Bowl twice. He's lost one. He's won one. He's done everything you can do. But really, at 36, are you going to go into the life of the NFL TV guy for the next 30 years? I got to think this is more Super Bowl hangover. After a little while, he's going to want to get right back at it.
Emily Kaplan.
This story has lingered for like 3 days because he keeps giving vague responses. It's not the right time to have this conversation. He just wants to be in the moment. The conversation I think he's trying to have, or the point we should take away from it, is normalizing work-life balance and realizing the maniacal grind of being a football coach isn't necessarily sustainable or not the only thing in life, and you can prioritize being a present father or husband or just doing something else.
Pablo Torre.
I'm a little bit more cynical about this, Tony. I wonder what he wants from the Rams. You have everything you wanted, seemingly. What else is there? Is it power? Is it money? And the second thing is, what's been normalized here most clearly to me is how much easier and more fun it is to just do television than actually coach a football team. Like, it's a pretty good retirement plan if you're 36. Hey, you don't have to worry about us asking you questions. You get to be the one asking them.
But, I mean, from everything you just told me, we have a resume here at such a young age. He could be one of the greatest coaches of all time.
I was going to say, Pablo, do you want him to take the job? What are we talking about?
Well, that's always a possibility. I was just thinking of John Madden, too, because he had such great success early, and he left the game, I think it was at 42, and he went on to have one of the greatest careers outside of the game while still in the game after that. Pablo Torre, Clinton Yates are going to have a great afternoon outside of Showdown. Tim Calisher, Emily Kaplan, Showdown, 2 minutes. Rosen's last 6 games, he scored 40, 38, 35, 36, 38, 45. But the most impressive part of that is he shot over 50% in all those games, which may not stop traffic in your head, but this next sentence will. He's the second player, the only since Wilt Chamberlain, to do that. Tim, how significant is that Chamberlain tying record that DeRozan just set?
Even if it's a record we don't even understand, if it's Wilt's record and you're tying it, that's important. Here's what's important. In those 6 games, he made a 3 in 1 game. Still doesn't shoot threes. Saving basketball from inside the line.
Ooh, Emily Kaplan.
Been scoring at a Wilt pace and with a Wilt efficiency, and that's very impressive. Also, he's been playing great basketball.
I was trying to follow if I missed the line there. Okay. Yes, he is playing great basketball. Thank you very much,
Didn't
Emily.
land.
He was playing great Showdown. Clippers 119, Warriors 104. It's been bad for 6 or 7 games in a row. Steve Kerr said, talking about the defense, he says that they may be worse in the league now after they started the year so good defensively. Emily, something or nothing?
Oh, it's nothing. These guys are going to be fine because I keep reading that they're going to be active on the buyout market. And if you need any proof that the NBA has become a monstrosity with too many cottage industries, the buyout market exists, people. That's wild.
Tim Kalisha?
It's a reminder that even with Steph Curry and even with Wiggins as an all-star and Klay Thompson back, they still need Draymond Green. He hasn't been playing in February. Their defense is falling apart, giving up 51 points a game in the paint.
Tim Kalisha sweeping his way into FaceTime.
That's how you do it. Tonight is the last night of district play in the state of Texas. That means it's on to state for, yes, my alma mater, the Richardson Golden Eagles. #1 team in the state. Oh, did I forget? #1 team in the nation, according to Max Preps and others. Kason Wallace, senior, on his way to Kentucky. Ryland Griffin, senior, on his way to Alabama. Timothy Jordan, a junior and a bad man inside the paint. Shout out to Coach Kevin Lawson. Here come the Eagles. First state title in Richardson history.
Wow, Tim
Here we go.
Kalisha from an
Let's go.
intramural
Let's go.
Hall of Famer.
Let's go.
You're also great at basketball.
Are you in the Hall of Fame
Bring it.
at Richardson High School? Or is that just Pat Kalisha that's in there?
I don't like to talk about my